No Return is an insanely fun new roguelike in The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. In this mode, you'll be able to take on all the factions and bosses and everything from the main game in various scenarios as you progress through challenges to unlock new rewards. This is a pretty tough mode, so I thought through the best tips and tricks that you need to know to succeed. Let's go! Let me know in the comments who your favorite character for this mode is, and let's start with actually starting it, right? Like, you start from the home screen. It is worth mentioning here as well that it does spoil basically everything from the main story, so that's worth actually doing that first if you haven't. Like, that includes all the characters, the enemies, the bosses, locations, literally everything, so go and do the main story first. But other than that, the difficulty here is one of the key choices you'll make other than what type of run you are going to do. Now, obviously at first you'll only have the basic run available to you, and then you get custom and then the daily run. With any of these modes, first you will pick a difficulty setting. Now, the key thing to think about here is whether you are going to try and aim for chasing a high score, say for the leaderboards, like on the daily runs, or whether you're just trying to complete challenges to actually unlock things. And in that case, it's probably better to stick to the lower difficulties, as it doesn't matter too much or really at all if you are completing challenges on a lower difficulty versus a high. But if you are aiming just to complete challenges to unlock those extra characters or the extra skins, then the lower difficulties are the way to go. But initially, definitely focus on unlocking those characters, as each character has a unique kit and it's best to unlock them all and find out which one works for you and which one you like best before trying to chase any of those high scores, especially, you know, in the daily runs or if you're trying to compete with your friends in any of the other modes. When you are back at base, this is the time to really upgrade and focus on your build. So the first thing you obviously want to do is collect any of those rewards, especially any dead drop rewards. We'll talk about what they are in a little bit, but you want to save the resources that you earn in the early stages for the later parts of the run. Now, except for supplements, right? You can always spend supplements on your skill trees, but things like the weapon parts, now you may pick a better weapon from a trading post, and if you've blown all your weapon parts upgrading a pistol, you won't be able to use them on any of those other weapons. Same with actually the currency for the trading post, right? Like, you want to save those for some of the better weapons, which are more expensive, or any sort of recipes that you're actually looking for. And honestly, don't be afraid to re-roll the items that show up in the shop here, because for most cases, like don't pick anything that's not really going to be of use to you. It's better to use you to re-roll and find something that's actually valuable than just to grab something you're not actually going to use, right? A good example here is like the smoke bomb. Like, I've never used it, but it's something that you can grab from the store or you can get with certain characters. And always focus on making some sort of a build, right, that either leans into the character's strengths or what you're trying to do for that run. You know, an example here for this run with Ellie, I was using the bow. So obviously I grabbed the arrow recipe so I can then craft arrows without having to find them in the runs. And then the explosive arrows was really valuable for this build as well. And I focused on the weapon upgrades for the bow, as that was my core weapon that I was using on that run. Picking the right modes and enemies can be tricky as well. In the beginning, you've only got access to Assault and Hunt, but there are two other game modes, being Capture and Holdout, that will come a little bit later. For the most part here, the one you want to avoid is Hunted. Hunted is the hardest of these, in my opinion. Now, it's sort of fine for the early rounds as there's not as many enemies, but especially in the later rounds, you can get overwhelmed very fast by the amount of enemies that just keep coming for you during that window. And the timer is longer in the later rounds as well, especially for Infected. They are literally the worst enemy type, as they have such a wide amount of enemy types inside, like the Infected faction. And when you're in the Hunted mode and they're all coming at you at once and they honestly just charge right at your face, it can be quite difficult to deal with. Holdout's a little similar, as it's kind of essentially the same as Hunted, except they're hunting your ally, not yourself. But I often find that Holdout's a little bit easier because you can sort of prepare and set up a bit better than you can in Hunted. But ultimately, the thing to consider, other than the mode, is really the rewards you're getting, especially if it's going to give you a specific skill tree. You'll notice in the rewards at certain points on the branching options you pick here that they will actually give you a certain skill tree. Now, actually what these skill trees are, it does take some time to sort of learn which ones are which, as they're a little bit different to the main game. But when you're picking which ones here, you want to pick ones that are more beneficial for your build or something that you're actually going to focus on, right? Survival is always a great one to grab just to improve your overall survivability, but it's an easy thing to skip over when you're looking at which option you're going to pick. Just make sure you check those rewards and see if you're actually getting a skill tree out of it and it's one that you actually want to use. All right, let's cover some must-know tips now. The very first one is like the biggest tip, and that is to turn on the auto pickup in the accessibility settings. This saves you an absolute ton of time, as as you just vacuum up all available resources that you can carry, right? You don't want to be wasting those precious seconds having to actually manually pick up everything. You'll now just like hoover everything up. And this is really important in between waves of, say, assault, or at the end when you get that sort of 20 seconds of like free time where there's no enemies. You essentially just want to run around and collect absolutely everything you possibly can, as you can craft between rounds. And there's also just resources that you can use for later, right? And you need those resources, especially for things that later craft, like med kits. And then if you're using traps on a certain run, like say using Dina to do crafting, right? It's really good to have as much of those resources as possible. Turning on the auto pickup means you don't have to worry about it. You can just focus on the game itself and it will then pick up everything for you. You also don't need or shouldn't buy every weapon that appears in the shop, right? Like in most cases, I'll grab a stealth weapon like a bow or a crossbow, and a strong ranged weapon like a shotgun or a rifle, something like that, and then the occasional flavor piece like a flamethrower or something. It depends on the run, right? But you don't need to buy every single weapon. It's better to focus on a couple of options and only upgrade those specific options rather than overloading yourself with like too many sort of weapons. Gambits are a random challenge that will appear in the top left occasionally that'll give you various rewards. These are typically small rewards, so I wouldn't stress too much if you don't actually get them done, right? Like it's better to survive the run and keep progressing than die trying to complete a gambit, but if you can do them, then definitely do them. The one that I would focus on, however, is dead drops. Now, dead drops are super important, especially in the earlier rounds for weapons and recipes, as essentially when you go to these locations, you'll need to deliver some sort of crafted items into them, and at the end of the run, you'll either get a weapon or some sort of crafting recipe. Great for early game options because it'll expand your arsenal for not necessarily free, but just for the cost of a crafted item, which is very easy to get more of rather than wasting currency on certain things. The downside here, there's no guarantee to knowing what you're going to get. And then also, like, you may get something that's not super valuable, but the later rounds probably wouldn't be doing too many dead drops, as you want to keep those crafted items for the actual boss itself. Now, things like gambits and dead drops will unlock over time. You won't have these at the very start. You've got to actually progress to a certain point through the challenges before these options unlock and open up to you. And once they do, you'll definitely see more success. Allies are always great backup to have in certain game modes, especially hunted. So if you see any of the options on the cards that do have allies, they'll always have that icon next to them. It's worth grabbing. It's also worth pointing out as well that some of the characters, even after you've unlocked them, they don't necessarily unlock as an ally. You'll need to do challenges for them. Tommy and Joel are good examples of this. You can actually go into their challenge trees and see that you need to complete certain challenges with them before they actually unlock as an ally to appear in any of the different runs. Generally speaking, as you're sort of completing any of these modes, maintaining stealth is definitely advisable, especially on the higher difficulties. There are characters that lean into the stealth aspects as well. All the same AI and mechanics and everything from the main game apply in No Return, but just, you know, as a quick refresher, you can obviously prone in grass and distract enemies with yellow bottles and stuff. If you are spotted, you can re-enter stealth by like stealthing away from that area without getting seen and like flanking around behind the enemies. They'll obviously think you're still there and you can then take them out. The same thing happens when certain rounds start, right? Like in Salt Waves and Hunted and stuff, they will know where you were when they spawn. So if they spawn, you know, at an X location and you're at Y, if you're still at Y, that's actually where they're going to go. So once that round starts, move away from that location and you can keep your stealth in order to be able to take them out. And then it's worth just knowing that so you are aware of where those enemies are going to focus. Their attention is on that area where you were when they spawned. Also, a huge tip for one of the worst mods that you can get in any of these modes is that photo mode filters. The photo mode filters like mod that'll appear is super negative, as it like basically blocks your entire view. Like you can't really like see anything. A massive tip for this is you can remove it by actually opening up the photo mode. It'll remove the filter so you can then use it to like locate enemies, be able to like see any resources and stuff that you're looking for. And then, you know, once you start the game, the mode, like the filter will start again, but it just makes such a difference that you can actually see these enemies, even for that brief moment, to sort of calculate, you know, what's actually around you and get your bearings on the locations, which is a massive struggle in some of these times when these filters are on, but huge tip for you there. Each character has a different starting gear, crafting recipes and effects. Like for example, Tommy has a custom sniper rifle, but he can't dodge, which means that his melee capabilities aren't particularly great. So whoever you play here, like make sure you lean into their kit and their upgrade tree, as they all have a unique upgrade tree, and then you can add different trees on top of that. My favorites here, one of them would be Yara. Now she lacks in like weapons and options at the very start of the game, but she gains a permanent companion in Lev throughout the whole journey. So she's really good if you just want to have someone with you for that whole journey, and you can obviously get weapons and gear and stuff quest just as you're playing. Mel is like surprisingly good. Her medkit buffs are actually insane. Plus her speed boost is like ridiculous for hunted and like escaping enemies and just zooming around the arenas. Lev's also excellent on his own for the stealth with the bow, and conversely Manny's great for the other side of things, like if you want to go in all guns blazing, as he can craft ammunition, which is really good if you just want to blow people up with that. And like honestly, you can see success with any of the characters, right? If you play your cards right, lean into their kits, you'll definitely see success with all of them. But I'd love to know in the comments what your favorite character in the no return mode is, so do let me know down there. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.